Hey, what's happening, you guys? And welcome to the Proclivity Podcast. My name is Joel Cochran. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host, Emily Rodella. Emily, check out your lights in the back. Wow.
Thank you. Yep. I have a little background now.
If you guys don't know, we're on YouTube. You can watch us interact, watch our facial expressions. Check it out. Go to Proclivity on YouTube, and you can watch this as well. I don't know. Maybe people do. Do you watch anybody? Watch podcasts?
No, unless I'm looking up a specific part from a podcast from someone.
Right. Well, that's why we record it, so you can have little snippets, little clips. Welcome to today's podcast, guys. We're diving straight into it because it's the Daily Drive. The Daily Drive is all about short, to the point topics. And we've covered them in the past. We've done things like collagen, and today we're going to do sugar. Boom, boom, boom. We're just coming off the holidays. Lots of sugar. And we're moving into the new year. And this is like a total snare for most people. It's like, oh, it's the holidays. Tons of sugar. And then you roll into the new year and you're like, oh man, new year, new me.
Yeah, no wonder why it feels hard.
Yeah, and you just got done loading yourself with sugar for 14 days straight, and you still have 52 of grandma's cookies sitting in the cupboard. Like, well, I mean, should I really get rid of it? And the reason you don't want to get rid of it is because your body's craving it,
right? And
we'll make up the excuse in our head. Well, Emily made these cookies specially for me. You know what I do?
Oh, I've been there. Yeah. What do you do?
Trash can.
I do too.
Quick and hard. You
Unless they're a good paleo special cookie that way, like good ingredients, then I may freeze them if I have excess or give them away.
Trash can. and you guys know. Yeah, and you guys know who's who here. It depends with Emily, and I'm just like, trash can. This is what it is. Anyways, we're going to be diving in, talking about sugar today, you guys. We're going to be talking about how it affects your body. What type of sugars are out there? Are there good sugars? Bad sugars? Do we need sugars? We're also going to be talking about how to be able to break that addiction. So buckle in, pun intended, Daily Drive. We're going to dive right in. So, Coach Emily, let's dive in. What is sugar?
Sugar is it comes in many different forms, and back in the day it came in things like fruit and the form of fructose, and there's different sugars you can get from different fruits, different veggies, different plants, and it's meant as that quick source of fuel for us. And it enters our bloodstream usually, depending on the type, and gets converted into our cells to use as fuel. So sugar, it comes in lots of different forms. And depending on the person, there's different forms that might be better for you. But typically we're looking at different forms. Anything with the word ose, O-S-E, so fructose, sucrose, dextrose, there's a lot of them. Those are all the sugars in the forms.
Yeah, there tends to be a lot, and there tends to be a lot of confusion behind sugar, right? There's a lot of fake sugars, right? What's about the real sugars? Agave sugars, right? What is the difference between all of these sugars? You mentioned that it may affect you differently when it enters your bloodstream. Let's touch on that.
Yeah, so glucose or sucrose versus fructose, for example. So you mentioned agave is made out of fructose, mostly. I should say a lot of things have a combination, just like fats and foods. There's combinations of different types of fats. A lot of sugar or foods have a lot of combinations of sugars. But again, and as an example, agave is made about 80% up of fructose and 20% up of sucrose, I believe, is the other. And so when it's fructose, it doesn't need insulin to be taken in by the cells. It goes to the liver, and the liver processes it. So there's a benefit of things like fructose or agave, for example. I would say one of the only benefits really is that it doesn't affect our blood sugar as much, but it does tend to stress our liver out. There's a lot of studies showing, these are animal studies, so it's hard to compare humans to animals with blood sugar specifically.
Right.
Yet, those are a lot of these studies are showing that can stress the liver out, and those sugars and carbs tend to be converted to fat more quickly. So we don't want that. But some people are like, oh, agave or fructose is natural. Yet again, it can stress someone's liver out. Again, depending on who you are, but for the most part, I recommend staying away from those because of a lot of the studies showing also shows that if we are eating those things, so like the agave, here, let me rethink. Oh, so yeah, it's going to our liver. Our blood glucose isn't as high, but it can cause a lot of other health issues down the road.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing you say is that, a lot of people will go, oh, it's fruit, or I'm using agave nectar. I'm using a more natural source, yet it's going to the liver. It's not affecting the insulin as much. So we don't have that up and down in terms of high release of insulin, blood sugar levels kind of going wonky.
Right.
Yet it does go to the liver, and it can be stored as fat quicker than it would if it was a simple sugar.
Yeah. Yeah. More easily. And the studies tend to show that people who drink more, say, fructose, which is in a lot of sweetened drinks like soda or fruit juice, right? Anything that's not eaten with the whole fruit, with the fiber, with the nutrients, we tend to overeat it. And so that's the other part of the issue is eating it. We're over consuming calories in general with that.
Because it's so readily easy to our body. There is no like resistance in terms of like fiber. Your body has to break it down, right? So there's more to it than it is when it's something super simple like in fruit drinks, and they hide it so well, right? In different fruit drinks, and it's a Powerade, and we're giving you electrolytes, but it's still all simple sugars, right?
Yeah, there's lots of different names for it, so it could be hidden. This is why it's helpful when we're looking at ingredient labels to be familiar with the different types of sugar. But again, there's 20, 30, 40 different types that could be named differently. Being aware, and that's why we go, hey, look for simple ingredients that you know what they are. But yes, it's typically those added sugars that are the most harmful.
Right. So out of the different types of sugars, is there a sugar we should be looking for? If we're gonna have sugar, is there a suggestion in terms of what sugar we want to be looking for?
Yeah. So first we're looking, I look to whole foods. If you're really going to start at the top of like, again, fruit, can we have something that has some nutrients and fiber attached to it? Again, that way, like you said, it's going to digest and absorb a little bit slower and not cause as high of a insulin or glucose and insulin spike. And it's going to digest better, right? And we're not going to eat as much of it because we're getting a little bit more satiated from those nutrients and the fibers. So fruit, veggies, right? Those are all carbs that turn into sugar. And there's, of course, fructose in fruit. So that's where I'd start. And then I look towards things like stevia. So for most people, and this is a natural sweetener that tends to not have a blood sugar effect, right? And this is why it's so popular. It's natural. So it's not going to cause issues for most people. There's still ongoing studies with it, right? And it doesn't spike your blood sugar. So I'd look at stevia and then go to things like honey, coconut sugar, maple syrup, again, because those are more natural sweeteners. They are still sugar.
Yep.
So they still convert to sugar in your body, yet they tend to have a little bit of nutrients and some fiber, depending on which one's attached to it.
Okay, so I'm gonna make this really tactful here for our listeners. If you are somebody who is just hitting mainlining sugar, aka you're hitting the cookies, you're hitting the refined sugars, in the caramels and the candies and so on and so forth, and like, man, I'm really trying to break loose of this. An example of a sweet treat that I do is Greek yogurt with blueberries. And I add in some vanilla protein, naked whey vanilla protein that does have a little bit of stevia in it. And then I might add in a little bit of nut butter. And that's a darn pretty sweet treat. Yet if somebody's way mainline it, that might not seem so sweet. So would we do something like, okay, let's do blueberries, strawberries, maybe add in a little bit of stevia into it, like some sprinkle of stevia, and then maybe like some agave honey, right? Or agave, or maybe a little bit of honey just drizzled onto it.
I would
that's step. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would not use agave. I don't recommend agave because of what we're talking about.
Okay, agave. So then what would we put in it?
So yeah, stevia number one. If you can do the droppers, I like the liquid stevia versus the granule. A lot of people are like, oh, the granule just tastes weird. And I agree.
Gotcha.
So there's liquid and there's flavors of it. So that's what I'd recommend first. Or like you said, if you can find a flavored protein powder that is already sweetened with stevia, and yeah, if you need more, go ahead with that. Then I would look to honey or maple syrup. Again, those have some nutrients to them and some benefits to them. Again, using them in moderation.
Got you. In moderation is a key component there, guys.
Yep.
Yet I have found for most people when I make that for somebody is that because there's the fats, there's protein in there, and they're eating it, they tend to be like, oh, okay, that's good enough. Because it's not this teeny little caramel sugar, right? We're like, oh, one down. Oh, well, I can do two. I can do three, right? Before we know it's a ton of sugar that we're eating, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's sugar in itself. And I know that people have some questions, guys. And if you have questions about sugar, feel free, reach out or put it in the comments when it comes to the type of sugar. But really what we're looking at is that we want to start moving towards that fructose. That stevia is a good one. And then the agave that we see a lot of people talk about, it's actually stressing the liver. So be really careful or utilize that sparingly, correct?
Right. Yeah. So minimize or avoid agave and added fructose. We do not want those.
Gotcha. Cool. So let's talk about the effects of sugar on the body. What are some of the short-term effects? Because listen, people are hammering down sugar and they don't even know it because there's so many sugar in highly processed foods that it's in stuff like marinara sauce or ketchup, right? These random things are like, what? There's sugar in that, right? That seems to be more savory or more salty, but there's still sugar in it. And so what are the effects that we see when it comes to sugar?
Yeah, it's going to add in there
long-term.
Things like low-fat yogurt, right? You think, oh, this is healthy for me because like, that's a whole nother subject, right? Check your labels. That's the key component here. In the short term, what happens is when we have sugar, it enters our bloodstream and our body has signaled, hey, there's a lot of sugar in here. Again, going back to glucose, sucrose, our cells are going to want to release insulin, our cells are going to start receiving insulin to uptake that glucose because our body doesn't want to be at a high blood sugar, right? So usually within 10 to 15 minutes, our blood sugar rises within eating, I should say. And then insulin's released to go pick up and store that glucose. Because usually it's too much for what we actually need currently, right? Unless we are walking, running, we're hiking, we're doing physical activity literally while we're doing that. Otherwise, again, insulin goes in, tries to clear up some of that. And oftentimes if it's too much blood sugar, then our body releases a lot of insulin. And oftentimes that can bring our blood sugar down way too far on the flip end. So this is what people refer to as the blood sugar roller coaster. So as a summary, our blood sugar goes up high, and then insulin is released into our bloodstream to go pick up that glucose. And then our blood sugar goes low, usually right after that so again, our blood sugar is high, probably about an hour mark, and then it dips shortly after that because of the insulin coming in. In that whole process, high blood sugar is an inflammatory response in our body, right? It's not meant to have that much sugar. And at least chronically, right, throughout the day in and day out. And those things can cause higher blood pressure, right? It can cause just inflammation in general. It can cause a lot of other things. It stimulates free fatty acids in the liver, and it's causing this response, right? So it's calling in the troops, the inflammatory response. And again, it's not meant to be happening at a crazy spike like it often does in our culture.
And so with this, and we know inflammation is one of the number one killers, right? Because inflammation is, we get inflammation when we work out, right? We get inflammation when we eat. And we want to keep inflammation as low as possible,
Right?
When we're not sleeping enough, we're building up inflammation in the brain and in the body. And this is what causes mid-belly fat and heart disease and so on and so forth. And so looking at the effects of sugar, the short-term effects can be weight gain, right? Maybe depression, lethargic. What are some of the long-term effects that we see?
Yeah. And I should add in there, the real short term is, right, you have the energy boost perhaps, and then the big energy dip. And then you have more cravings because your body's like, oh, I feel so low now. I need more to keep going. So it could be brain fog, low energy, cravings, right? Those are the typical ones. And then more into like medium effects, right? Weight gain, like you said, lack of energy overall, not sleeping well, hormone imbalance. And those tend to be the more intermediate. And then long term, it leads to the serious stuff, right? So blood sugar, inflammation, right? In general, they are often considered the silent killers because they work slowly over time. You don't notice it day to day, but in time, they lead to these things like heart disease. And I mentioned hormone imbalance can lead to a host of other illnesses and diseases or issues. Leptin resistance, right? Leptins is what signals that we're full. You can start to become resistant to that. Diabetes, of course, right?
Because of that leptin resistance.
Yep, and the insulin resistance, right? If our insulin and leptin are called to action too much, they get tired and they're like, not doing this anymore. You can have skin issues, right? Whether it be acne, dermatitis, wrinkles, right? There's a process called glycation where it's literally like decreasing the collagen efficiency in our skin. Joint pains, a big one, or arthritis. I hear in a lot of our older clientele. And then things like cancer. And again, a lot of different things that is linked to, but the big main one that research is confirming more and more is heart disease and anything related to that.
Yeah. And guys, if you didn't know, heart disease is the number one killer, right? In America. I wonder why. Oh, because most Americans are eating up to 17 teaspoons of sugar a day. That's the average. People are eating way more than that. You're drinking a Coca-Cola, like a large Coca-Cola, and you're just blasting through that.
Yeah.
Right? Because 17 teaspoons, somewhere around like 70 to 80 grams of sugar. And y'all, this is something that is very important. And now here's the next thing. There is an addictive connection with sugar in the brain. And I know before I quit sugar, okay, this is identity piece, folks. I don't eat sugar. There's times then there's sugar in some meals that I have, but I just made the decision like, no, I'm done eating sugar. I don't have sugar in my house. I don't do sugar. Yet there was times when I would be getting done with a meal and I'd be thinking about the sweet treat I have at home. I'd be thinking about it. I'd be like sitting with friends, getting done with a nice savory meal, and I'd be thinking about, oh, dude, I got 3 cookies at home. I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to get to those. That's some addictive stuff. So how do we break this addiction? How is there any steps in terms of, hey, we got some sugar addicts out there. They're like, how am I supposed to quit this? What do we need to do to be able to break it up?
Yeah, it in this, or I'm going to say again, it depends the person, but in general, when we eat sugar, there's a dopamine and a serotonin release, right? So we're getting that high basically. And so that's why they compare it to cocaine. Like literally it's a drug because we want more and more of it. Our brain tells us, hey, this feels good. So one, we can go to this extreme as to remove it completely. Or we can start to decrease the amount. This is what I recommend for most people is for what you typically have on a day-to-day basis, how can we start to decrease that amount slowly but surely, more and more? So my best example is if you have sugar in your coffee, right? If you add in a teaspoon of sugar, can you do half a teaspoon tomorrow for the next week? And then can you do a quarter teaspoon in the next week? Again, for some people, if they go cold turkey, that actually helps them more, right? I use the example of going from regular milk chocolate to 100% dark chocolate. That 100% is going to taste real bitter. But if you have that for a week or two and then go down to say 80 or 90%, that 80 or 90% is going to taste great.
Yeah.
So same with sugar. There's different approaches to this, but overall, decrease that amount of sugar, adjust your palate, because a lot of the times it's our palate and it's what we're used to.
Right.
So start decreasing that. For some people, actually, we talk about the gut-brain connection quite often, right? So sometimes it's the brain, the dopamine, being like, oh my gosh, I want more of this. But it also can be in the gut. For some people, it can be an overgrowth of bacteria or yeast or candida and overgrowth. And that can literally be telling your brain like, hey, I want more of this because it's feeding the overgrowth in your stomach, in your gut. So for some people, we do want to pay attention to gut health. And things like, are we getting enough magnesium and zinc, right? The things that help our gut do better, digest better. For me, I know if I'm low on magnesium, I'm going to crave chocolate more, especially around my cycle.
Yep.
So there's these little intricacies here and there. But yeah, overall, if you're first starting out, minimize the amount of sugar. And can you switch to more nutrient-dense treats, right? That's my favorite one to do, right? Instead of a typical high sugar, refined oil, glutinous cookie, can we, again, do a paleo version where there's honey instead, or a little bit of coconut sugar with almond flour and eating it with a meal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another little trick. If we're going to have a sweet treat or something sweet, have it with the meal or with the protein at a minimum.
Right.
It's going to help that blood sugar.
Yep. I totally hear you. I mean, being able to add in some of that protein, same thing. My go-to is that Greek yogurt because there's going to be protein, because there's going to be fiber. We don't have to have this quick cut, guys. If you really struggle, right? First thing that I would suggest you to do is get rid of all the refined sugars out of your house. Just make a full sweep. And then you can come around and you can look at the paleo cookies, or I like 7 Sundays, right? Has some more protein in it, less sugar than usual. You can just grab a couple handfuls. It's a nice treat without going over the top. It's really being able to start making that switch, right? I didn't quit sugar overnight. I was a sugar addict. There's many stories of me just going way overboard when it comes to sugar. Yet I slowly started turning, like Emily said, going from, milk chocolate, Hershey's milk chocolate, to, a higher dark chocolate, to then just doing 100% dark chocolate along with some nut butter. And that nut butter is going to have a little bit of sugar in it. So I'm getting a little bit of the sugar, but I'm getting fats, proteins, omega-3s. I'm getting more beneficial stuff. And so, guys, when it comes to making this switch, start thinking about getting the refined foods out. Start thinking about, can I add in fiber or protein into my treat, my sugary treat? Can I make it myself so I know the exact ingredients that I'm putting in? And then can I start limiting myself in terms of how often I'm having it? If you're having those cravings in the middle of the day or in the evening, there's some type of trigger that's going off. Maybe go for a walk instead. Get some more water with some element in it. That can solve it real quick. Sometimes I have a midday, craving for sugar, and I have some element with some water, go for a walk, boom, gone.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah, same.
And remember, guys, what we focus on expands. This is now on the mental side. What you focus on expands. Don't think about the sugar. Don't think about the candy. Don't think about the cookie. What are you going to think about? Cookie. More. Remove yourself from the situation, the temptation. If you are running an office right now and you have candy in your office, okay, shout out to Logic, commercial real estate, Reno, Nevada, and Heather for making the move and pulling out all the candy. Remove it. Remove candy from it is landmines in a high stress environment. it makes it worse and worse and worse. So that's what we got for today. Coach Emily, anything else? It's the daily drive. We're keeping it under 30 minutes. It's 27 minutes that we're in. Anything else?
No, that's it. If you can, swap it for a more nutrient-dense sugar and minimize or lower the level of sweetness. Then if you can, eat it with a protein or take a walk. That'll at least help with the blood sugar. And then 3, work on that gut health and or make sure you're getting enough nutrients in general so you're not craving sugar. Oftentimes that's what it is. We're craving electrolytes or we're craving more complex carbs, fat, protein, right? Make sure you're eating balanced meals.
A lot of pieces to it, guys, yet there is a way out of the sugar addiction, and we're here to help. Call 1-800-555. No, I'm just kidding. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. Joel@proclivity.co. Emily@proclivity.co. You can go to our website, www.proclivity.co. Anything else, Emily?
That's it. That's the best day ever.
Guys. That's it. Best day ever. She's already signing off. There's nothing else to be said. Goodbye, guys.
Bye.